Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome to my Astro community. And in today's video, I'm going to be telling you your predictions for the year 2020. Now, I'm super excited just because I feel like 2020 is such a big year for everyone, every single zodiac sign definitely has a lot going on next year. And in today's video, I'm going to tell you specifically for your sign what's going on. Now, of course, little disclaimer, I can't predict your year specifically for you because this is a general video. However, the prediction in this video will be most accurate for your rising sign. So if you use your rising sign, my prediction technique will work the most accurately, if that makes sense. And in this video, I'm using the outer planets to predict your year. In my other prediction videos, which I will link down below, I use the inner planets because they're more for the month to month. But in this video, since I'm predicting the entire year, I'm using the outer planets of Jupiter and Saturn. And then also I do have a video about Jupiter and I have a video about Saturn on my channel already. So if you guys want to know how those two planets influence your own birth chart, I'll link those down below as well. So yeah, let's just get into this video. If you guys don't know your rising sign yet, I will put the rising sign calculator down below. But again, like I said, use your rising sign because that's going to be the most accurate. Okay, so let's talk about the year 2020 for Aries. Okay, Aries, so next year, the two major planets that are really going to be influencing your life are Jupiter and Saturn. Now, I will start with Jupiter. As you guys know, Jupiter is the planet of abundance, expansion. Jupiter brings all the good things in our chart. And for you, Aries, Jupiter is going to be in your 10th house for 2020. Now, if you guys don't know, for Jupiter, it stays in one house for an entire year. So whatever house it is in for that year, you can expect the major themes of that house to be very relevant for you. So of course, 10th house does represent career. I do have a houses video on my channel too. If you guys want to watch that, I'll link it down below. But Jupiter is going to be in your 10th house for 2020. So I'm really excited for you guys specifically just because you're going to experience a lot of blessings, a lot of new directions as it pertains to your career. And specifically, Jupiter is going to be influencing your 10th house. It's also going to be influencing your 2nd house and your 6th house by trine. So all three of those houses are going to be sort of activated for you. And 2nd house is about money, 6th house is about work and routine, 10th house is about career. So all of those areas of your life are going to be emphasized in a really great way because of Jupiter. And so what you can expect for 2020 is success in your career expansion. Next year for Aries, my biggest prediction for you guys that I wrote down is that you guys are gonna start your own business, start your own company, start something that is your own. I know for Aries rising specifically, you guys are the type of people to be the pioneer, be the leader. You guys don't really answer to anyone else but yourself. So next year is the year for you to start a business and really start it in a structured way. Really not just dream about it and kind of halfway do it. You're actually gonna do it and it's going to be successful for you. However, if you're not on the entrepreneur journey, you don't have to be. You might get a new job, a new promotion. You're going to be recognized in your career. You're going to make a lot of money because of your career. You're just going to be so ambitious. And because of your ambition and your hard work, you're going to really elevate your status. 10th house is status. 10th house is legacy. So your status is going to elevate, your money is going to elevate, your career is just going to explode in a good way. And specifically, if you're on an entrepreneur journey, you're going to have your own business, your own company, and it's going to be successful if you do start it next year. And so, of course, like I said in the beginning, the two major planets influencing you are Jupiter and Saturn. Now, Jupiter is the good planet, the happy planet, the good luck planet, but Saturn is a little bit different. Saturn is a little bit more challenging and it does bring more challenges into our life. So next year in March, Saturn is going into your 11th house. And so 11th house is all about our gains in life, our friends, communities we're a part of, social media, anything having to do with social networking. The 11th house does rule. And so some challenges you might face next year is that you might have a disconnect with your friends. You might lose a lot of friends. You might go through something where it's you're a part of a certain community and then for some reason you just I don't know, are exiled out of that community or disconnected from that community. This is kind of a hard transit because it does indicate kind of loss of friendship, loss of connection to your community. And Saturn going into your 11th house, it's almost like you will almost feel like, why does everyone hate me? It's almost like you might be a little bit isolated friendship-wise, socially. But I will say the more brighter side of Saturn in the 11th house is that it really does amp up your career. Like I said, career is the major theme for Aries next year. So instead of being focused on really personal relationships, maybe your personal relationships and your friend groups and stuff aren't gonna go too well for you, or you might lose some friends or whatever. I feel like your business relationships will pick up. Your business connections will strengthen. It's almost like you're so focused on career and you're so focused on expanding your business that the only relationships that might be more successful for you are business relationships, are social connections. Not necessarily like personal ones, but ones that benefit you from a professional standpoint. So yeah, overall, a challenge is that your personal relationships might be strained. However, your business relationships might be strengthened. Your business life, professional life overall is very expanded. It's there's very positive influences to your professional, business, work life, career life. But your personal life might be a little bit challenging. So, I mean, it can't be all good and it can't be all bad. So those are the things you are dealing with in 2020. And my major prediction for you is that you are gonna start your own business and it will be successful. And last but not least, I did pull a tarot card for you guys for the year, and I do have a key word for you for the year. And I did put those on my Instagram. So you guys can go ahead and go to my Instagram, AstroKit, if you guys want to see your tarot card for the year and your keyword for the year. Okay, so let's talk about 2020 for Taurus. So for you, Taurus, the two major planets that are going to influence you for the entire year are Jupiter and Saturn. So let's start off with Jupiter. Now, Jupiter is the planet of luck and abundance, and it brings all good things in our birth chart. And Jupiter is going to be in your 9th house for the entire year. And so basically what this means is that 9th house themes are going to be very emphasized for you in 2020. For you, Taurus, I see expansion, I see travel. 9th house is all about higher learning, travel, expansion, faith, optimism, religion. 9th house really represents how we view the world in a spiritual sense. And so I feel like this is such like a beneficial year for Taurus because Taurus, I feel like, might have trouble with change sometimes, because once Taurus like make up their mind about something, it can't be changed too easily. But with Jupiter in the 9th house, I feel like change is gonna happen so easily for you and you're not gonna fight it. It's gonna be so, what's the word? It's like fluid, flawless, just change for you. It's positive change. It's not change that is unpredictable. I feel like it's a change that will benefit you in the long term. And this is a year where you're just opening your horizons, or it's almost like your horizons are opened for you. It's almost like the universe is kind of like paving a way for you or opening doors for you. Especially for Taurus, I have this vision of just doors opening for you and you getting so many opportunities that maybe you didn't have this past year, because Saturn was in your 9th house, so maybe you felt a little bit restricted in terms of like opportunities. But next year you're just going to be so blessed with so much prosperity. And specifically some events happening for you is that maybe you're traveling a lot next year. Maybe you're more spontaneous. You're more just willing to do things that you haven't done before. Maybe you're more adventurous. Maybe you're more of a risk taker. I feel like next year, if you're a bit more risky, I guess, with your life, I feel like it will pay off in a beneficial way. And then also another major theme for you next year, or major event, is that maybe you're just really focused on your faith, focused on your own religion. Maybe you change your faith, change your religion, or you just change your perception on the world. Like I said, there's this theme of transformation kind of for Taurus, I feel like, but really positive transformation. And you're really just expanding your mind, expanding your horizons. Maybe you're expanding your horizons through travel, through education. This is really great if you're like a college student, or like you're a high school student watching this and you're applying to college. You have a really good chance of getting into your dream college, your dream university. If you're already in college, it's going to be an excellent academic year for you. If you're in school at all, school is going to be very beneficial for you. next year. And almost also you might study abroad next year too. If you're a college student, or if you're thinking about studying abroad, it would be beneficial for you to do so. And so because Jupiter is influencing the 9th house, it's also influencing your 1st house and your 5th house by trine. So all 3 of these houses, 1st house is about identity, 9th house is about travel, as I mentioned, 5th house is about indulgence and fun. So you're just gonna have a lot of luck next year. I feel like you're gonna have so many circumstances where you're just like in a lucky situation, or you just have a lot of fun, or I don't know, you're just so optimistic next year and just focused on expansion. And then, as I mentioned in the beginning, Saturn is also influencing you. So Saturn is a bit more challenging and not as like lucky and beneficial as Jupiter. But for you personally, Taurus, Saturn is going to be in your 10th house for 2020. And what this means is that you're going to be really focused on building your career. Now, what Saturn does is it's a very slow moving energy. So the way it influences your 10th house is about career. So you're going to be really focused on building something, but not too quickly. What Saturn does is causes kind of delays and restrictions. So with career, you might experience a bit of delays and restrictions, but ultimately you're really focused on building some sort of legacy. I will say for you though, Saturn in the 10th house isn't too bad, because I mean Saturn is pretty comfortable there and naturally rules the 10th house. So you're really going to be focused on maybe even being your own boss within your career. And specifically for you, I almost envision you gaining some sort of authority in your career, gaining some sort of authority in your job. Now, whether this be like starting your own business, maybe even becoming a leader within your job if you're not like an entrepreneur, you're going to gain some sort of authority next year, and it's going to be very pivotal in your life. And overall, Saturn is influencing your 10th house of career, your 2nd house of money, and your 6th house of work and routine. So you're really going to be working hard to build something specific. I almost see for Taurus, with Jupiter and Saturn's influence, I feel like you're going to be building something and maybe taking it like to the next level, like overseas, or taking it, I don't know, expanding your legacy in some way, expanding your brand in some way, expanding your professional standing in some way. Like your professional life next year is going to go to the next level, like a level maybe you don't even expect. I feel like Jupiter is really going to bless you in terms of career and your profession. Saturn is really pushing you to put the hard work in to build that legacy, build that career, build that business, and it is going to be successful for you. So I would say your major challenge next year is being a little bit too focused on work. I think next year you might be a bit of a workaholic, or you might get stressed out a bit from work just because of Saturn's influence. But positive next year for you is that you're going to gain a lot of authority in your career. You're going to travel. You're going to expand your mind, your faith. Your entire life is just going to expand. So that's some good things that are going to happen for you. Also, I did pull a tarot card of the year for you, and I pulled like a word of the year for you, and I posted those on my Instagram. So if you guys want to know what those are, go to my Instagram, AstroKit, and I have the post on this video. Okay, so let's talk about 2020 for Gemini. So for you, Gemini, the 2 main planets that are influencing you next year are Jupiter and Saturn. So with those 2 planets, Jupiter stays in one house for the entire year. Saturn stays in one house for 2 years. And so basically those 2 planets will magnify the themes of that specific house in your birth chart. So specifically for you, Gemini, Jupiter is going to be in your 8th house for 2020, and then Saturn is going to be in your 9th house. So first, let's talk about Jupiter really quickly before we talk about Saturn. Now, Jupiter is a planet of luck, abundance, and it brings prosperity to whatever house it enters. So basically, 8th house themes will be very magnified for you. 8th house is the house of everything occult, everything secret, our psychology. It also represents inheritance, intimacy, money, finances, other people's money, insurance, things like that. And 8th house is the house of transformation overall. So basically for you, 8th house themes will be very magnified for you. So you might experience a better version of 8th house. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, 8th house is kind of like the house of suffering in astrology. Like, it's not the best house. Like, it's kind of an unfavorable house. But the fact that you have a favorable planet in an unfavorable house, you might experience some more of the positive benefits from that house. So for example, I can see Gemini as getting some sort of inheritance. Now this might be an unexpected inheritance. Like you might be watching this like, I don't have any inheritances to get, or I don't have anything like that. But next year in 2020, I kind of feel like you might have an instance where you get a huge inheritance. Maybe you get a huge insurance check, or what do you call it, like a settlement, maybe like some sort of unexpected money that comes from someone else, because that's what the 8th house does rule. So that's like a positive manifestation of it. But I think the more challenging manifestation of this 8th house energy for you is just unexpected events, unexpected chaos. 8th house is the house that kind of manifests as unexpected circumstances, unexpected losses, unexpected gains. So I feel like your year might be a little bit up and down, like with extremes. 8th house does represent extremes as well. So next year, I feel like there's like gonna be extreme circumstances for you. Like you might experience like extremely good months, extremely good days, and then extremely bad days, extremely bad months. And there's gonna be kind of no in between. There's going to be a lot of extremes for you next year. And then of course, extreme transformation is very present for you as well. So you might go through a lot of transformation. It might be a challenge. You might suffer. You might, celebrate. You might experience those range of emotions. But it's just going to be a bit extreme for you. And then also with this 8th house energy, it's very spiritual energy as well. And Jupiter is activating your 8th house, your 4th house, and your 12th house. So 4th house is the house of family and your past and childhood. 12th house is the house of spirituality and your subconscious mind. And then I already mentioned what the 8th house is. So those 3 houses will be activated, 4, 8, and 12. And those are very spiritual houses. Those are the water houses. So in 2020, you're gonna maybe get more spiritual, really invest more time in your spiritual self. You're really gonna go deep into your own spiritual, your spirit, I guess. You're gonna have a lot of spiritual circumstances next year, or be very spiritual in general, get very curious about your past lives, your past lineage, your ancestors, psychology, things like that. Like the deeper, more taboo parts of life, you're going to be more invested in. And then as I mentioned, Saturn is also going to be influencing you. Now Saturn is a more challenging planet. It's not as fun and happy as Jupiter. But Saturn is going to be in your 9th house for 2020. And so what's really going to be happening for you is that with this Saturn influence in your 9th house is all about travel, expansion, optimism, faith. This is a year where it's like you transform your faith in some way. You transform your philosophy on the world. You transform your views. You're just totally like questioning life maybe, or being very cynical about what you believe, being very cynical about life in a 3D sense. I feel like next year you're going to have like a spiritual awakening. Like you're going to realize like this like 3D life is all an illusion. You're going to realize the meaning of life, things like that. I feel like you're going to go really deep next year. And especially with Saturn in the 9th house, you're really going to be questioning life in general. Saturn is going to be influencing houses 1, 5, and 9. So I mentioned what house 9 is about, but house 1 is about identity, house 5 is about socializing and creativity. So those areas of your life might be a bit restricted. Next year, I feel like you're going to struggle with optimism a bit. There are going to be times that seem really isolated for you. Like I said, you might go through extremes where it's like, you're extremely isolated, you're extremely social. It's going to be kind of like an up and down year for you, I predict. And especially with Saturn's influence, it's going to kind of block your optimism a bit, block your faith. There's going to be times where you seriously question your faith and what you believe in. And that's supposed to happen on your entire spiritual journey, but next year that entire theme is going to be so magnified for you. So the biggest challenges for you next year is that you might just go through extremes, extreme suffering, extreme isolation, really struggle to kind of balance your life out overall. That's going to be a challenge for you, to be honest. And then some positive things that might happen is that you might really get more into your spirituality, get more in tune with who you truly are, your soul, your purpose. I feel like next year you're really going to find your purpose. And then also on a more like mundane level, you might get an inheritance or settlement check in a really unexpected way, like some unexpected big sum of money you might get. And then also I did pull a tarot card of the year for you, and I pulled like a word of the year for you, and I posted those on my Instagram, so go follow me on Instagram at AstroKit and check the post where I have those two things for you guys. Okay, so let's talk about 2020 for Cancer. Okay, Cancer, so two major planets that are influencing you for 2020 are Jupiter and Saturn. Now, each of these planets are so influential because Jupiter stays in one house for the entire year, and then Saturn stays in one house for 2 full years. And so basically, for those years that the planets are in those houses, the themes of those specific houses are very magnified in your life. So for you, Cancer, first I'll talk about Jupiter. So Jupiter is going to be in your 7th house in 2020. Now, I'm super excited for you guys. Don't tell the rest of the signs, but I feel like Cancer is going to have a really great year next year. Like, really one of the best out of all of the zodiac signs. But with Jupiter, Jupiter is going to be in your 7th house. Jupiter just entered your 7th house this past November, and it's going to stay there until next November. And so what is the 7th house? 7th house is all about relationships. It's about business, partnerships. It's about marriage. Anything having to do with one-on-one relationships, one-on-one partnerships, 7th house is all about. And so Jupiter is the planet of luck, abundance, prosperity. I do have a Jupiter video on my channel too. I'll link it down below if you want to know more about Jupiter in your own chart. But basically, Jupiter does bring great things wherever it is. So 7th house themes are going to be magnified for you next year, but Jupiter is really going to influence those themes in a positive way. And so it's super exciting because I feel like you're going to have really successful relationships. I know for you, Cancer, this past year might have been hard. I feel like you might have been a little bit isolated or cut off a lot of people. Like you might have had to really just get rid of a lot of people in your life, romantic or platonic. Either one of those, you might have just cut a lot of people off. But next year, you're going to be blessed with a new relationship specifically. I really feel for Cancer, you might get into a long-term relationship next year. You might find your dream partner next year. Either way, relationship is going to be a lot better for you next year. You're going to have a lot of new friends, a lot of new business associates. You're going to have a lot of success in your relationships next year. And so what Jupiter does, it gives this positive influence to your 7th house, but not just your 7th house, but also your 3rd and 11th house, because those houses trine in astrology. So basically, 3rd house is all about business, socializing, communication. 11th house is also a social house. So it's like all of your social houses in your birth chart are going to be positively influenced next year. So like I said, you're going to make a lot of new friends, a lot of new business associates. You're going to be networking more. And not only are you making connections with people, but you're benefiting from those connections. You're literally meeting people that will change your life in the best way possible. So your romance life is going to be very beneficial for you. Like I said, you might get into a really significant relationship with like your dream partner. And then on a business front, I feel like it's so positive too, because 7th house is about business. It is about contracts. So it might be a good business year for you professionally. As I mentioned, your 11th house is activated too. So social networks, even social media, if you have a job on social media, or you're someone who just networks for your job a lot, maybe, you're really going to have beneficial meetings with people or meet people that are very important to the success of your business, and overall business partnerships will be successful for you. And I almost feel like for you, Cancer, like it's just going to be so refreshing. Like I said, you've had Saturn and Pluto in your 7th house this past year. That's not easy. And next year it's going to be a lot better for you. So as I mentioned earlier, the two planets that are influencing you are Jupiter and Saturn. So now I'm going to talk about Saturn. So Saturn stays in one house for 2 years, and in March 2020, Saturn is going into your 8th house. So this is going to manifest for you as learning a lot of spiritual lessons. 8th house is the house of spirituality, transformation, our subconscious mind, our psychological mind. Everything that's kind of secret or hidden about us, the 8th house does kind of represent. So with Saturn here, Saturn represents control, restriction. It represents adding structure to something. So having it in this 8th house, I really feel like specifically for Cancers, you're really going to gain control mastery over your emotions. And even more specifically, you're going to gain more control and mastery over your fears. 8th house represents fears as well. And I feel like with 8th house energy, it's kind of hard to explain, but just like the manifestation of Saturn in the 8th house, I feel like it's going to be you mastering all the things you were afraid of before, if that makes sense. It's like you're gonna like know yourself so well, have such good control of your own emotions. And I know as a Cancer it might be hard to control your emotions, right? But in 2020 you're really going to be working on this theme of self-mastery, and I feel like by the end of 2020 you're going to be so confident in yourself because you know yourself, you mastered your emotions, no one can trigger you, no one can control your emotions because you've reached this point of full self-control. And I really feel like it's a year for you where you're turning your pain, your trauma into triumph. You're turning it into something that will work for you. You're not settling for that victim mentality anymore. I feel like you're transforming into this very grounded, self-mastered person. And then with Saturn's influence, you have to be careful for financial deals. So be careful with like insurance and like, because 8th house does rule insurance and finance as well, and Saturn does represent restriction or delays. So when it comes to money and financial deals, maybe insurance deals, things like that, things you invest in, just be careful because it can be delayed or restricted in some way, or it might not go as planned. So next year for 2020, I think your major challenge is, honestly, it's hard to say. Like I said, I feel like you have such a great year next year, Cancer, out of all the zodiac signs. And I don't want to say, I really can't think of a major challenge right now. I would say your major challenge is not to be too fearful. Don't go back to your victim mentality. Don't settle for being the victim. Like I said, you're really on this road of self-mastery, self-control, and I think you're on par to like accomplish that. So I think your major challenge is not what is called like regressing or going back or relapsing or whatever. And then the positive things happening for you is just new relationships, new romantic relationships, new business partnerships, just a lot of abundance as it pertains to your relationships and the people you meet. And then also I have a special surprise for you guys. I did pull a tarot card of the year for you, and then I pulled a word of the year, and I posted it on my Instagram. So go ahead and go to my Instagram, AstroKit, and check that out. I have the written post of all the predictions up there, so you guys can go check it out. Okay, so let's talk about 2020 for Leo. So for you, Leo, the two major planets influencing your life are Jupiter and Saturn. So basically, Jupiter stays in one house for an entire year, and then Saturn stays in one house for an entire 2 years. And for those years that the planets are in those houses, those house themes, those specific house themes, are magnified for you in your life. So I will talk about Jupiter first. So right now, Jupiter just entered your 6th house, and it's going to stay there until November 2020. And so basically, 6th house themes will be very magnified for you, but they're going to be magnified for you in a positive way, since Jupiter is the planet of luck. It's the planet of abundance, prosperity. Jupiter brings all the good things in our birth chart. So you're going to have a sixth house themed kind of year for you, but it's going to impact you in a positive way. So specifically, I feel like for Leo, this is a year where you're so motivated to accomplish your goals. 6th house is the house of daily routines. It's the house of work. It's the house of our work ethic, and it's the house of our job as well. And then it's also the house of our health and vitality. So maybe in this past year, I know for Leo risings, I've said this in my past prediction videos, you might have struggled with health issues, chronic health issues, even if it was like minor, like maybe you had a bunch of colds last year or things like that. Maybe you struggled with health overall or your energy levels. But next year you're going to feel way better. You're going to be so healthy. Maybe you're so motivated to work out, or I could see you sort of being like on a fitness journey too, or being on a health journey or something like that next year. And then as it pertains to work, you're going to be so motivated to achieve your goals. You're going to have this newfound sense of ambition. And because you have this, you have this increased sense of vitality, you're so healthy, you can accomplish more professionally. And you're going to accomplish so much next year professionally because you have this Jupiter influence, kind of almost boosting you up in your career life. And I would say the major prediction for you, it's like I feel this sense of like you are like working hard, sure, but you're gaining so much more than you put in, if that makes sense. It's almost like you're working less, like you're physically working less and earning so much more. Whereas last year you might have felt the opposite, where it's like you're working so hard, you're working yourself dry, and not earning as much, right? But next year it's almost like you have to do nothing and just get everything. So what that means for you, like specifically, depends on your life and your job. But I feel like you're just gonna not put as much effort in, but still get rewards, if that makes sense. And then also Jupiter is activating your 10th house and your 2nd house. So your 2nd house is about money, 10th house is about career, and it's activating your 6th house already. We know that. And 6th house is about your job and work ethic and stuff. So overall, your career, your professional life, your financial life is gonna be boosted next year. You're gonna make more money, be elevated in your career, in your job, get a new job, get a better job, maybe even start your own business. It's a really great year next year to start your own business, by the way. It's gonna really pay off if you do it next year, and you're not gonna like break a sweat. I almost see Leo risings just like not like, you know, just not doing too much, but still reaping the rewards of everything they set out to do, or your goals, or whatever you set intentions for, you're gonna, you know, gain from that, but not work as hard. And then I talked about Jupiter already, so let's talk about Saturn really quick. So Saturn isn't such like a positive planet in astrology. Saturn kind of brings hard lessons, obviously for the greater good, but Saturn can be a bit of a challenging planet and kind of challenge the house of wherever it's placed for the 2 years. So next year, starting in March 2020, Saturn is going to be in your 7th house. So I'm not going to lie, this is going to be challenging for you just because it might prompt you to be sort of isolated. 7th house is about relationships. It is about partnerships. It is about other people, our friends, our romantic partners, people like that, people close to us. And Saturn kind of represents isolation. It represents restriction or delays. As I mentioned, it brings a lot of hard lessons to whatever house it enters. So you're going to learn a lot of hard lessons as it pertains to love, partnership, friendship. You might, you know, have a falling out with people, break up with people. I definitely see like breakups next year for you. And then Saturn is influencing your 7th house. It's influencing your 3rd house and 11th house, because all 3 of those houses trine in astrology. So like your social life might kind of be challenging. Like I said, you might feel a little bit isolated overall. But I will say, like, Saturn's influence can really go one of 2 ways. So one way, as I mentioned, is isolation, breaking up with people. But then the second way is establishing a long-term relationship. Saturn does represent longevity. 7th house is relationships. So you might enter like a long-term relationship. But either way, relationships for you are kind of not so beneficial. I would say your work life is very beneficial next year, but your relationships might take a bit of a hit, might be a little bit challenging overall for you. So I would say your major challenge next year is relationships, is one-on-one relationships with people. Like maybe next year you feel a little bit isolated, or you have those moments where you just, you know, have a falling out with people, things like that. Your biggest challenge next year is relationships, but the major benefit next year, like something positive happening for you, is your career, is your work life. You're going to be accomplishing a lot in terms of career and your job, and you're going to be so healthy and have a lot of vitality as well. So that's working for you, but like I said, relationships might be a bit of a challenge. But I do have a surprise for you guys. I did pull a tarot card of the year for you guys, and I pulled a word of the year, and I posted those on my Instagram. My Instagram is AstroKit, so go check that out if you want to know what those 2 things are. Okay, so let's talk about the year 2020 for Virgo. So for you, Virgo, the 2 major planets that are influencing you next year are Jupiter and Saturn. So with Jupiter, it stays in one house for an entire year, and then Saturn stays in one house for 2 full years. So those 2 houses that those planets are in, the themes of those houses will be magnified for you. Okay, so let's first start off with Jupiter. Now, Jupiter is a planet of luck, abundance. It's a planet that brings all things good. It's a really good luck planet. It brings very beneficial influences. And for 2020, Jupiter is going to be in your 5th house. And so I'm going to be honest, I'm really excited for Virgos because just overall your prediction is really great for next year. So let me get into it. So basically with Jupiter in the 5th house, the 5th house is all about fun, indulgence, romance. I say this throughout like a lot of my videos, but the 5th house, I call it the fun house. It's the house of all things pleasurable, all things desirable. It's the house of entertainment, things like that. And it's also the house of talent and creativity too. So with Virgo, you have a really significant prediction. I feel like this is a year where you're really tapping into your talents, you're tapping into your creative abilities, and you're not only tapping into them, you're not only paying attention to your hobbies. I feel like you're taking one of your creative hobbies, right, and turning it into a business, taking it so seriously that you monetize it, that you structure it into a thing where you make money from it. And my biggest prediction for Virgo is that you're going to start monetizing your hobbies. And I feel like this is so significant for you, Virgo, just because Virgos can be so hard on themselves. Virgos are so stressed out a lot of the time because they are perfectionists, right? But what Jupiter's going to do for you, being in your 5th house for the year, it's going to give you almost like this weight lifted off of your chest, off of your shoulders. You're going to have so much more fun. You're going to have more social time. You're going to have a really popping romantic life. And you're just going to really be channeling in your creativity. You're not going to be so stressed out next year. I feel like next year you're just going to be indulging quite a bit. And the 5th house is also a very lucky house in astrology and in your birth chart. Some astrologers would argue it's like the luckiest house in your birth chart. So to have the luckiest planet, Jupiter, in your luckiest house next year, just going to be a popping year for you overall. And it's also funny too because Jupiter's also influencing your 1st house and your 9th house. So houses 1, 5, and 9 are influenced next year for you because those houses are like your earth houses and they trine each other. But basically having Jupiter also influence your 1st house, you're going to be feeling very confident, so optimistic. Like this is so significant for Virgos because they can be so cynical, right? So pessimistic at times and critical. But next year, nothing can stop your stride, seriously. You're going to be so optimistic. You're going to have a new outlook on life. You're going to have these hobbies that you monetize that you're not afraid to do so. I feel like you're going to have this boost of confidence that you didn't have before and just be creating almost like your dream life because of this confidence you have and this creativity you will be gifted with. Also, 9th house is a house of travel too, so Jupiter influences that house as well for you. So you might be traveling. 9th house is expansion as well. So overall, there's just like a lot of expansion for you in a positive direction. And also, I will say that your romantic life is like emphasized next year. 5th house is the house of romance and dating. So I wouldn't be surprised if you got into a new relationship or you just had a lot of suitors, like a lot of people like chasing after you, like hopefully in a good way, but like a lot of people that want to date you, a lot of people that desire you. You're gonna have options next year, Virgo. I feel like Virgo, I said this about Cancers too, but Cancers and Virgos are gonna have really great years next year. Okay, and then the second part of this is that, like I said, we have Jupiter influencing you next year, but we also have Saturn. Now, Saturn stays in one house for 2 years. So Saturn is going to be in your 6th house next year, starting in March. So with this, Saturn kind of is like the party pooper of astrology. I feel like Saturn is like the, it brings structure, it brings discipline, it brings restriction, delays. It's a little bit more of a harder planet because it gives you more hard lessons in life. So the fact that it's influencing your 6th house is all about health, work, routine, your diet. So having Saturn here, you might be adding more structure to your routine, more structure to your work life. But honestly, I feel like Saturn honestly manifests a lot of times in a very challenging way. But for you, Virgo, I feel like it's going to manifest more positively, if that makes sense. Because Saturn's going to be activating your houses 2, 6, and 10. And those are the houses. 10th house is the house of career, 2nd house is the house of money, 6th house is the house of work. So I feel like Saturn combined with this Jupiter energy of you kind of paying more attention to your hobbies and talents and even monetizing them, it really represents you maybe even turning it into a business. Like I said, you're going to be very career focused next year and very fun focused, like very creative next year. But I feel like what I see for Virgos is you kind of merging the two things. So as I mentioned, you have these creative endeavors and somehow you turn it into a business. And I feel like it's going to happen like almost like accidentally or very easily for you. Like if you started a business based on one of your passions next year, it would just take off. It would just be successful. You'd see profit right away or results or success right away. So I would say start that business next year because it's really going to pay off for Virgos. And then also some challenges you might face is that since Saturn will be in your 6th house, you might face some health issues, maybe some, what is the word, lethargic, being a little bit low energy at times, or mind you, Saturn is going into your 6th house in March. So starting in March, maybe you experience a little bit of health issues, nothing major. I can't predict your entire like chart based on just Saturn's influence, but just watch out for health issues. And then obviously the positives of your life next year would be you're going to be taking your creative hobbies more seriously, your dating life is going to be popping, you're just going to be more in tune with the funner side of life, if that makes sense. You're going to be indulging more, having fun, socializing, and then as I mentioned, the challenge would be maybe health issues or overworking yourself too much, but overall I feel like Virgos have a really good year. And then I also have a surprise for you guys. I pulled a tarot card that represents your year. So I pulled a tarot card of the year for you for 2020. And then I have a keyword I pulled for you guys as well. So I posted those on my Instagram at AstroKit. So go check it out if you guys want to know what those two things are. Okay, so let's talk about 2020 for Libra. Okay, Libra, so the two major planets that are influencing you next year are Jupiter and Saturn. So with Jupiter and Saturn, Jupiter stays in one house for an entire year, and then Saturn stays in one house for 2 full years. And so basically for those years that those planets are in those houses, the themes of those houses are magnified in your life. So let's start off with Jupiter. So for you personally, Jupiter is going to be in your 4th house. And 4th house is the house of home, the house of family. It represents your mother as well. It represents feminine figures in your family or in your life. It also represents the past and childhood as well. And it also represents security and foundations. And then Jupiter, of course, is like one of the luckiest planets in astrology. It brings abundance, it brings prosperity, it brings good luck in your birth chart. So essentially next year for you, you're going to experience a lot of positive influence as it pertains to your home life, as it pertains to your relationship with your family. Specifically for you, I definitely see you maybe moving homes, maybe going abroad, maybe you move abroad in maybe like an extreme case, but either way, if you wanted to like move next year, start looking for your dream home, dream apartment, things like that, anything home related will benefit you next year, and I definitely see some of you guys moving next year. And overall next year for you, your home life will be so busy. I definitely see you maybe working from home, renovating your home, definitely, anything having to do with home. I definitely see you literally being home quite a bit, renovating your home, focused on your home, focused on maybe property if you're like in the real estate business or you want to buy property. Next year, you're going to be really invested in that market. And then also, interestingly enough, I feel like this is a time that might be very nostalgic for you. Like this could be a year where it's like you're focused on your past, like focused on maybe you do like an ancestry DNA search, have a family reunion, organize a family reunion. I feel like you're really investing your time in home life, and especially like your past lineage or your ancestry, like I said, maybe really focused on your relationship with your mother too. And I think the most positive manifestation of Jupiter influencing your 4th house for the year is that you might, like I said, get a new home, move into a new home, or just really have luck with that. So if you haven't had luck in the past with looking for an apartment or home, it's really beneficial next year to do that. And then also a new car as well. Jupiter, the 4th house does represent vehicles, so cars, motorcycles, things like that. You might get a new car, someone might give you a new car. So either way, you're very blessed in terms of home life, like literally physically homes and cars and vehicles too. And then also, like I said, Jupiter is influencing you, and then also Saturn. So Saturn is going to be in your 5th house next year, starting in March. So 5th house is the house of creativity. It's the house of hobbies, the house of talents, indulgence, fun, socializing, romance. And usually in my videos, I call the 5th house the fun house because it's the house of all things pleasurable, desirable. It's a very lucky house in astrology. So Saturn being here for the year is kind of a like party pooper. Like Saturn always, like the representation of Saturn is that it's a planet that brings restriction, structure, delays, hard lessons, right? So I feel like the fact that it's entering your 5th house, it's kind of like a party pooper type of energy for you. And I feel like the more challenging manifestation of Saturn being in your 5th house is that you kind of restrict yourself when it comes to pleasure, indulgence. It's not like you won't have fun next year. I just feel like you're going to have that influence of Saturn kind of putting you in check not to overindulge. And I know Libra risings are like known for like overindulgence because you're ruled by Venus, so you do like to indulge in things, right? But Saturn is going to be putting you in check next year, not really. Overindulging is what you're going to be learning throughout the year, if that makes sense. But I think like the positive manifestation of Saturn in your 5th house is that you're really going to be starting to structure your creative hobbies. This could be a year where you take one of your creative hobbies more seriously. Let's say you do like DIY things, or let's say you make DIY things, DIY shirts or earrings or something like that. And it's just your hobby, right? But then you somehow turn it into a business. Maybe you open a Poshmark store, Etsy shop. This is a time where it's like you're really taking your creativity very seriously and potentially even monetizing it, potentially even turning it into some sort of business. Ultimately, you are taking your hobbies to the next level, and Saturn is also going to be influencing your 1st house and 9th house. So houses 1, 5, and 9 are going to be influenced for you. So those are the houses of identity, the houses of travel, the houses of fun. So I feel like this is a time where you're really taking yourself seriously and making your goals a reality. I feel like you're really, really turning your goals into reality bit by bit, because Saturn is going to teach you how to structurize your creativity, structurize your dreams into something profitable or tangible. And then just to combine like the Jupiter influence, maybe you're working hard to build a family business. I definitely see that for some of you guys, where you go into business with your family, or you work hard to support your family, or something like that, where you are really working hard next year. I do see you working hard to actualize your dreams, and it might be family related on some level. So I would say your major challenges next year are that maybe you do face some restriction as it pertains to optimism or fun or indulgence. It's not like you won't have fun or anything like that. It's just like you might be put in check a few times, or have some hard lessons as it pertains to overindulgence or fun or optimism. And then also your positives for next year are involving family, home, like your literal home, your metaphorical home, your hometown. It's a good year for moving, getting a new car, things like that. And then also I have a surprise for you guys. I did pull a tarot card of the year for you, and I pulled a word of the year for you. So if you guys want to see what those two things are, head to my Instagram at the AstroKid. Okay, so let's talk about 2020 for Scorpio. Okay, Scorpio, so the two major planets influencing you next year are Jupiter and Saturn. So basically, Jupiter stays in one house for an entire year, and then Saturn stays in one house for 2 full years. And the houses that those planets are in are emphasized in your life. So first, let's talk about Jupiter. So Jupiter for you, Scorpio, next year is going to be in your 3rd house. So as most of you guys already know, Jupiter is the planet of luck, abundance, prosperity. I mentioned this in my Jupiter video on my channel. I'll link it down below. But Jupiter is a planet that brings all good things, right? And that's going to be in your 3rd house. Now, what is 3rd house? 3rd house is the house of communication. It's the house of business, the house of daily tasks. 3rd house also represents like literally our brothers, sisters, cousins, peers, people that are in close proximity to us. And what I see happening for Scorpios is that communication between you and those people, or just people in general, people around you, your communication is just going to improve so much. You're going to have a lot of beneficial conversations, beneficial ideas. It's almost like I see next year being very collaborative for you, and not just collaborative on sort of like a, oh, we're having fun, we're just talking level. I feel like you're gonna have conversations that change your life in a very positive way. And the collaborations you are a part of next year, whether it be like business partnerships, at school like partnerships, or group partnerships, anything involving other people or collaborating with them in a group, you're just gonna benefit from so much. It's almost like your social life is gonna take a boost and really propel you forward in life. And then third house is also the house of writing to logistics as well. So I could see this being an excellent year to write a book. I know that doesn't apply to everyone watching this, but if you're somebody who is like wants to write a book for some reason, or ever just thought about it, even if it was just like a, you know, one-time idea, it would be very beneficial for you to write a book. Anything having to do with writing will be very blessed for you, very beneficial. So maybe you're in school, you write papers, or like you're an English major, or you're a creative writer, anything like that. Like writing is gonna be so easy for you. And also songwriting too. I will say that like next year you're just gonna be channeling really amazing ideas, really creative ideas. If you have your own business or wanted to start your own business and you're like, I need an idea for my business, I need an idea that's profitable, you're just gonna think of so many ideas like that. I feel like, oh my god, Scorpio is going to have so many channeled ideas next year. I feel like, does that make sense? Like having ideas that come to you and they're just like so amazing and they are very successful for you. And then I also kind of mentioned this, but third house is activated for you next year. So those third house themes are activated. And then seventh house is also activated for you, and 11th house. So those are all the social houses in your chart. So like I said, your social life is going to be very boosted. It's going to be so expanded. Maybe you're making a lot of new friends, new connections, like I said, new social network type of connections, so things that might help you with your business. Either way, the people you come in contact with next year are all really destined to be in your life and really destined to help you in some way. So you're going to make a lot of positive social connections next year. And then we're going to talk about Saturn. So Saturn is going into your fourth house next year. So Saturn is going to be in your fourth house, and fourth house is all about family, home, past, foundations, things like that. And Saturn is a planet that does bring kind of hardship in astrology. It's kind of like the party pooper. I feel like Jupiter has all this great energy happening for you next year, but then Saturn has to put you in check, right? So for you, Scorpio, next year, I feel like you're going to be so focused on security. Saturn is the planet of security, and then fourth house is the house of security. So I feel like you're really going to be focused on developing security for yourself, maybe in the sense of like, not kind of like financial, but almost like securing where you live, securing your future, securing your career. You really want to, I feel like next year you're really laying a solid foundation for yourself, and you're really establishing a home life. I feel like I sense for some Scorpios, you're establishing like a home base. Like, I don't know if you moved around a lot in the past year, or maybe you stayed in a place you didn't really like, or you didn't feel like it was like home to you. I feel like next year you're going to be establishing like home, like whatever home is to you. It doesn't have to be like your hometown or like where you've always lived. I feel like you're going to be establishing like a metaphorical home for yourself, and maybe even moving into a home that feels like home for you. And then also, I feel like you could be focused a lot on your legacy, focused on reconciling the past. This might be a year where you're really focused on kind of thinking about your past and how it shapes your future, and kind of like, I don't know, facing the demons in your closet, kind of. I feel like that might happen for you next year, or an event might happen where it's like you have to face your past somehow, and really reconcile how that influenced your future. So some challenges you might face next year is some tension at home. Like I said, you are trying to establish a home for yourself, establish security or a foundation, but there might be some tension with family members. There might be tension with wherever you live. Like I said, you might be moving, but you might have challenges moving. Like maybe you have issues with the landlord or something like that, where it's a little bit delayed or a little bit challenging, although I do see success in that area of your life, like the 4th house area, like home and stuff, but you might have some challenges along the way because Saturn does give challenges and hardship before it gives rewards. But the positive for you next year is that your social life is really activated. It is going to be positively influencing your life. You're making new friends, new business partnerships, having just like these excellent like channeled creative ideas. Like I wouldn't be surprised if you just like channeled an entire book, like you just wrote a book, or just like somehow think of like an idea in like a minute that makes you a lot of money. So your ideas, communication is going to be positively influenced, writing, things like that, logistics, and social life is going to be very positively influenced next year. And then also I have a surprise for you guys. I did pull a tarot card of the year for you, and I pulled a word of the year. So if you guys want to know those two things, head to my Instagram, the Astro Kit, to check them out. Okay, so let's talk about 2020 for Sagittarius. So Sagittarius, the 2 planets influencing you next year are Jupiter and Saturn. So Jupiter stays in one house for an entire year, and then Saturn stays in one house for an entire 2 years. So basically the themes of those houses that the planets are in are going to be magnified for you during those years. So let's start off with Jupiter. So specifically for you, Sagittarius, Jupiter is going to be in your 2nd house next year. And honestly, that is super exciting. Now, 2nd house does represent money. It represents finance, our material possessions, our material wealth. 2nd house is also the house of our talents, what we're good at. And as most of you guys know already, Jupiter is the planet of luck, abundance, prosperity. Jupiter brings all the good things in life. If you guys haven't seen my Jupiter video, I have a video about it and what it means in your birth chart, so I'll link that down below. But basically, Jupiter is a really beneficial planet in astrology. So to have that in your 2nd house next year represents you're going to have a lot of beneficial energy influencing your financial life. And I feel like how this might literally manifest for you, Sagittarius, is that you're going to be making money next year. Not even just making money, but just receiving money. Maybe I almost feel like for you, it's like you do something small, or it's like you almost don't have to try that hard to make a lot of money, if that makes sense. It's almost like minimal effort, greater return. There's like a saying, but it's like I almost imagine you, like obviously you work hard maybe, but it's like you're not gonna work that hard to achieve a lot. I feel like you're gonna really achieve a lot of financial success, material success, but almost in a very lucky sense, if that makes sense. This is a really great year too for you to invest. It's almost like if you invest in something, you get a huge return on it, like low risk, high reward, or whatever. And overall for Sagittarius, I see your finances increasing quite a bit. Now, this doesn't have to be literally money. I definitely feel like I said, investments might pay off. You might be gifted with something very valuable, like someone like gives you like a Birkin bag. I know that's like extreme, but like think of something like that, like diamonds, Birkin bags, gold, things like that. Something really valuable might be given to you, or you might invest in something that's very valuable, or anything having to do with material wealth is going to be very boosted for you. This also might be a year where your natural talents are activated, if that makes sense. Like I said, 2nd house is the house of talents. So maybe if you have some sort of talent, depending on what planets are in your 2nd house, maybe you have a talent for cooking that you never knew you had, and next year you just like somehow start cooking a lot and you have a lot of fun with it, or you benefit from it financially, things like that. You might have a talent you never knew you had, and it's just gonna pop out next year very randomly and in a very lucky way. And then also next year, 2nd house does represent like literally our throat, our voice, our like mouth and what we put in our mouth. So next year I feel like you might be eating a lot or kind of overindulging. I think that's the kind of silver line with this whole Jupiter in the 2nd house thing. It's like you are making a lot of money, or you're getting a lot of money, or return on investments, things like that. But at the same time, it's kind of a recipe for overindulgence. So you might overindulge a bit next year, especially financially. So just watch out for that. You're going to make a lot of money, but you're going to spend a lot of money as well. And you also might be eating a lot too, or gaining some weight next year. And then also Jupiter is activating your 6th house and your 10th house. So this is a year where you're really blessed in terms of career. I definitely feel like this is a year where it's like whatever you do career-wise is going to pay off for you financially in a very beneficial way. So if you've been having like money issues or just trouble with career or having trouble with things taking off for you or being profitable, next year is going to be very profitable for you financially. And then of course, womp womp womp, we have Saturn. Saturn is like the party pooper. And Saturn is going to be in your third house next year. And third house is the house of communication. It's the house of creativity, the house of business. It literally represents like our peers, cousins, people that are around us. And ultimately, the third house is our immediate surroundings. And then Saturn, of course, is the planet of restriction, delays. It always brings like hard lessons to whatever house it enters into. And it always kind of puts things in check. But honestly, for you Sagittarius, I don't think Saturn is going to be too hard on you next year. I mean, it's in your third house. So what I see happening for you is that, and this could be a year, as I mentioned earlier, you might have like a natural talent you kind of start practicing, I guess, next year. And then with Saturn in your third house, maybe you devote a lot of disciplined time to, what's the word, like sharpening your craft or strengthening your craft. I definitely see you next year strengthening your craft and it being financially profitable for you. And this could also be a year where you're really changing your thought process, changing the way you problem solve, just changing your thinking in general. Overall, I feel like you're going to be monetizing your creativity as well, because as I mentioned, third house kind of is related to creativity, and then second house is going to have Jupiter in it, and then you have Saturn. So I feel like this is a recipe for you, like creating some sort of monetized business around your creative talent that you've come into, if that makes sense. That's just one manifestation, but I really do see you profiting off your creativity on some level. And also with this Saturn influence, I do see you kind of changing your perspective on life. Maybe you get more serious about life. Honestly, I feel like Saturn being in your third house is a good thing for you, because like I said, you might overindulge too much with Jupiter in the second, so I feel like Saturn is coming in to be like, put you in check a little bit. So I think it's good ultimately overall, and Saturn is bringing you that discipline that you do need for next year. So some challenges for you next year is that you might be overworking yourself just a little bit just because of the Saturn influence, or kind of not seeing all the possibilities at hand, maybe stressing yourself out unnecessarily. But the positives are that money is just going to be flowing to you. Finance is going to be increased for you. I feel like almost like whatever you touch turns to gold. I just heard that. And it's almost like whatever you want to monetize will be profitable, or whatever you want to invest in will be profitable. Obviously, you still have to think about it and rationalize what you should invest your money in, but whatever you do kind of think about as your investment strategy will be beneficial for you if you put effort into it. And then I do have a surprise for you guys. I pulled a tarot card of the year for you, and then I pulled a word of the year. So if you want to know what those two things are, head to my Instagram. I made a whole post about this video. My Instagram is AstroKit. Okay, so let's talk about 2020 for Capricorn. So Capricorn, the two major planets influencing you next year are Jupiter and Saturn. So with Jupiter, it stays in one house for an entire year, and then Saturn stays in one house for an entire 2 years. And so basically whatever houses those planets are in, the themes of those houses are emphasized for you during that year. Okay, so let's start off with Jupiter. So for you personally, Capricorn, Jupiter is going to be in your first house. And honestly, I feel so happy for Capricorns because Jupiter is the planet of luck, abundance, prosperity. It brings all the good things to whatever house it enters. And so the fact it's going to be in your first house, the first house is the house of identity, the house of our physical appearance, the house of our approach towards life, our confidence, our self-esteem as well. And so I'm so excited because I know I mentioned like in my past prediction videos, I'll link those down below if you guys want to check them out. I mentioned how Capricorns might have been quite stagnant this year, or kind of directionless, or it's almost like you had a direction maybe, or a way you wanted your life to be, and you worked really hard to manifest that or create that, and it just wasn't happening. Anything that you tried to create or tried to make happen was just not working out, and you just last year you might have felt very disappointed or had low self-esteem because things weren't working out for you like you wanted them to be. But in 2020, that's all going to change for the better because Jupiter is going to bring this sense of optimism to your life. If you've been feeling stagnant, directionless, purposeless, or just like in general things not working out for you, Jupiter is going to make things happen very quickly for you and in a very lucky sense, in a very spontaneous sense. And honestly, you're just gonna have this whole new perception on life, this whole new view on life. I feel like, and honestly, my prediction for Capricorn next year is like, the world is your oyster. You're gonna be so confident. You're just gonna take on the world with so much confidence, and like nothing can stop you next year. Really, you're gonna be so untouchable. And then also, it's like, I'm excited for you guys because I know Capricorns can be very hard workers. They can be hard on themselves. They have high standards. They're so responsible, right? They always have this kind of metaphorical weight on them. But next year, you're just going to be having more fun. It's like that load is taken off your shoulders. Things are just going to happen for you so easily. You can manifest easier. You can achieve your goals easier. Be more relaxed, optimistic, have an open mind. You're just overall, you yourself is going to be very positive next year. And then also, Jupiter is activating your first house, of course, but it's also activating your fifth house, your ninth house. Those are very lucky houses in astrology. Fifth house is all about romance, dating, fun, indulgence. Ninth house is about travel. So I wouldn't be surprised if you traveled a lot next year, if you got into a very significant relationship next year, if your dating life is what's popping next year. Overall, I do see fun, romance, and travel being magnified for you and things you will be participating in next year. And then we do have Saturn, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video. Saturn for you will be entering your second house in March. So Saturn being in the second house for 2020 can be somewhat challenging just because second house is the house of money, it's the house of finance, the house of self-worth. It's also the house that represents our talents as well. So I would say the challenging manifestation of this is you might be learning some hard lessons as it pertains to money. Saturn is kind of like the party pooper planet of astrology, especially in this like whole prediction because we have this happy energy of Jupiter, but then Saturn is coming to put Jupiter in check a bit. So even though next year you're going to be having fun and doing all this stuff and being optimistic, I do feel like Saturn will be putting you in check in terms of money and finance and kind of teaching you how not to overindulge. And as I mentioned, I feel like Capricorns are pretty good at like being responsible and stuff, but still I feel like you might be learning some hard lessons as it pertains to money next year, as it pertains to self-worth, as it pertains to managing your resources as well. But I do think the positive manifestation of Saturn being in your second house next year is that you really are going to add a lot of structure to your finances. I can see you creating like a business plan, a 5-year business plan or investment strategy. I can see you creating a lot of strategy as it pertains to money and your finances. So I think, honestly, I think a little bit of both will happen. Like you might learn a hard lesson as it pertains to money, sure, but then that teaches you how to create a better strategy as it pertains to money too. And then also you might be focused on developing your skills. Maybe you have a creative hobby, creative talent that you do have that you haven't really paid serious attention to or invested serious time in. And I think next year you're going to see the value in your own talents and invest a lot of serious time into it and maybe even profit off of it, monetize it, turn it into a business for yourself. And then the positive part of next year for you is that you're going to be so optimistic. You're going to be more social, maybe traveling, having romance, things like that. Also, I forgot to mention that Jupiter in the first house does indicate gaining weight. So you might gain a lot of weight next year or have trouble fluctuating with weight. But that's just like a little, I guess, fun fact with Jupiter in the first house transits is that they do indicate gaining weight. But yeah, that's not necessarily like a good or bad thing, but that's just like a little tip with Jupiter in the first house. And then also I do have a surprise for you guys. So I pulled a tarot card of the year for you. And then I also pulled a word of the year for you. So if you guys want to know what those two things are, head to my Instagram at the AstroKids and check out the post I have on 2020 predictions. Okay, so let's talk about 2020 for Aquarius. So Aquarius, the two major planets influencing you next year are Jupiter and Saturn. So Jupiter stays in one house for an entire year, and then Saturn Saturn stays in one house for an entire 2 years. And whatever houses those planets are in, the themes of those houses are magnified for you during the year. And so I'll start off with talking about Jupiter. So personally for you, Jupiter is going to be in your 12th house next year. And as most of you guys already know, Jupiter is the planet of abundance, it's the planet of prosperity, the planet of success, wealth, good luck, things like that. It's a very beneficial planet, right? And so it brings blessings to whatever house it enters into. So 12th house, it's going to be in your 12th house next year. So 12th house is the house of spirituality. It's the house of isolation, the house of privacy, the house of secrets, the house of kind of like other dimensions, if that makes sense, like otherworldly things we can't see, the intangible, anything spiritual, the 12th house does relate to. And so how this might manifest for you is that you might be spending a lot of time alone. I know naturally Aquarius kind of spend time alone, like that's not new to you. But specifically for next year, I feel like your alone time will be very beneficial for you. I feel like next year you're gonna like have like I don't want to say like psychic visions, but sort of like you might tap into like your own spiritual abilities, tap into the spirit world. Like next year, you're diving deep into your own soul, diving deep into your own spiritual knowledge. Like next year, it's almost like you're literally going down the rabbit hole, but kind of like in a good way. The 12th house is kind of like the rabbit hole in our chart. Like it's very insidious. There's a lot of things we don't know about it. It represents kind of like this kind of chaotic energy, right? But the fact that Jupiter is influencing it, and Jupiter is a positive planet, I feel like you're going to go into this rabbit hole of self-discovery, where you do discover things about yourself that you didn't know before. And like I said, there's this huge overarching theme of spirituality present. So you're going to really be diving deep into your own spirituality next year. Maybe you travel overseas, and maybe it's like a spiritual thing, like you go on a pilgrimage, or I don't know, you just go overseas to find yourself, or things like that, where it's like you're traveling maybe to a foreign country, or maybe you're meditating a lot, going to different dimensions. It's going to be very spiritual for you. And the fact that you're going so deep, it's going to be beneficial for your soul's journey. And honestly, this might be kind of a hidden year for you. Like it's a year where maybe you're not too publicly, like you're not putting yourself out there so much. I feel like you're very inwardly turned next year. But like I said, I feel like it's not super negative. I feel like ultimately you will benefit from it, but either way, it's a little bit lonely, a little bit hidden, a little bit secluded for you next year. And then we do have Saturn. So as I mentioned, Saturn is the other planet that is very influential for you this next year. And it's going to be in your first house next year, starting in March. So Saturn is the planet of restriction. Saturn is the planet of kind of putting things in check. So having it in your first house of identity, first house is also our approach to life, our physical appearance, just like who we are and our confidence. So having Saturn here, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, is kind of challenging. Like I said, there's this theme of isolation very present for you. So you might be very isolated next year. I feel like your self-confidence might take a hit next year. Like your self-confidence might not be as high. You might be going through some sort of identity transformation, identity crisis. Oh my god, I definitely feel like next year for Aquarius, it's like you're going into a spiritual rabbit hole, right? And then by the end of the year, you're coming out an entirely new, different person. But yeah, I feel like your time alone next year will be very transformative for you. Saturn might make you a bit of a loner too, and like I said, kind of just being isolated next year. And then also Saturn kind of causes this sense of stagnation. So next year, I feel like if you run into situations where it's like you want to accomplish something, right, or you want to achieve a certain goal, but it just doesn't happen for you, or it's just kind of something, I feel like next year you might feel a lot of roadblocks. Like you might feel a lot of blocks on your way to success. But I feel like all of those blocks are very purposeful, and it's important not to get too discouraged by them, and I feel like they're so necessary in your journey. But there definitely will be certain blocks for you next year, and kind of like this sense of stagnation as it pertains to your journey through life. And then also another like message I heard while I'm talking is that it's like you're switching gears next year. It's almost like you're in this car, right? And you're the only one in the car, you're driving the car, and then you're going one direction, and then next year is you just switching that direction entirely and going a whole different route that you never imagined before. So I would say overall next year, a challenge you might face is a bit of isolation, stagnation, feeling a little bit confined or feeling a little bit trapped with something, and overall maybe not as free as you normally do. You might be feeling, like I said, isolated, trapped. You feel like your life isn't going where it's supposed to go, but I feel like all of this is kind of necessary for your whole soul's evolution. But yeah, I think those are your challenges for next year, is basically like isolation, loneliness. And then your positives for next year is that you're going to be really diving deep into your true soul, your true soul's passion. You're going to be discovering yourself in a way that you never did before. You also might be traveling overseas as well. And then also I do have a surprise for you guys. I did pull a tarot card of the year for you, and I pulled a word of the year. So if you guys want to know what those two things are, head to my Instagram at AstroKit, and I made a whole post on the 2020 predictions for you. Okay, so let's talk about 2020 for Pisces. So Pisces, the two major planets influencing you next year are Jupiter and Saturn. So Jupiter stays in one house for an entire year, and then Saturn stays in one house for an entire 2 years. So basically those houses that those planets are in, the themes of those houses will influence your entire year and be very magnified for you for that year. So let's start off with Jupiter. So for you Pisces, Jupiter is going to be in your 11th house next year. And that's really exciting just because 11th house is considered a very lucky house in astrology, a very prosperous house. And then of course Jupiter is like the luckiest planet. So you have a lot of luck and abundance coming towards you next year. And specifically, 11th house is all about our gains in life, what we gain in life, our social media. It also represents social networks, community, friendship, anything involving other people. It's a very social house. And so, as I mentioned, you might be experiencing a lot of beneficial energy in that area of your life. There's going to be a huge 11th house theme of your year next year. So maybe you're making a lot of new friends, a lot of new business connections. Maybe if you have like a social media based business or you want to start one, this is the year for you to have a lot of success with it, see a lot of profit from it, and just have it grow and expand to lengths and heights that you never could have predicted for yourself. And also with this Jupiter 11th house energy, I do see an elevation in status for you. So especially like in a professional sense, maybe you want to have an online based business, and maybe you want to be a blogger, or if you just have a regular job, I do see this like elevation in status almost sort of effortlessly. It's almost like people recognize you for your talents, for your creativity. People just recognize you for who you are and what you do, almost more easily than before or easily than previous years for you. And then also maybe you get a promotion at work, or promotion in whatever you do, or anything involving elevation and status I do see happening for you. And then also what's really exciting for you Pisces is that you might be making a lot of new friends next year, joining new groups, whether it be online or in real life. And then also I mentioned this in my previous prediction video where you guys had Saturn in your 11th house last year, right? So you might have had like a loss of friends, or everything that I'm explaining that will happen to you in 2020 kind of was like the opposite in 2019, if that makes sense. So maybe you didn't experience a lot of abundance or prosperity, or maybe like I said, you had a falling out with people or had trouble making friends, things like that. Anything involving social dynamics maybe you had challenges with because of Saturn last year, but this year in 2020 you're gonna experience so much more abundance than you did last year. And then also, like I said, 11th house is a very lucky house in astrology and in your birth chart, and next year I feel like you're gonna find yourself in just random lucky situations. Like this is a year where it's like you randomly get gifted things, or you randomly just meet a person that's, you know, really important or changes your life in some way, or you randomly just get a lot of social media followers, or a boost in your social media to a point where you can monetize it. I feel like you're just gonna have so much random luck next year, and your manifestation abilities will be magnified as well. So it's almost like whatever you wish next year will come true. Like it's like almost, I just heard it. It's like make a wish. I feel like spirit is kind of saying like make a wish next year or manifest next year or anything like that. You're just gonna just get whatever you want almost. And then also I feel like your quality of life will improve next year and you just will be so much happier because of that. And then of course your 11th house is activated next year, but your 3rd house and 7th house is also activated. So 7th house is the house of romance, is the house of partnership, marriage, things like that. 3rd house is also a very social house. So like I said, socializing, being social is going to be very magnified for you, but it's also going to be magnified for you in a romantic sense too. I think in a platonic sense, it's very magnified, like that's obvious, but also in a romantic sense, you might find a partner, someone you seriously consider for marriage, things like that. You really might find the one next year or like your soulmate next year. But anyway, let's talk about Saturn now. So Saturn is going to be moving into your 12th house next year. As I mentioned, it was in your 11th house this past year, but it's going to be in your 12th house starting in March. So 12th house is the house of spirituality. It's the house of isolation, foreign lands. It's kind of like the blind spot in our birth chart. It's the house of secrets. It's a house that is kind of like insidious, I would describe it as. And it does contain all things spiritual and transcendental. And of course, Saturn is the planet of restriction, delay, responsibility, structure, things like that. So having Saturn in your 12th house, I feel like will manifest for you really structuring your spirituality. This is a year where you really might meditate a lot, which I know sounds kind of like, okay, whatever, but I feel like you're really gonna take meditation and take your spirituality to the next level and have it work for you or have it benefit your life in some way. It's not just like a hobby for you, I guess. Next year, I feel like you're really taking it seriously. And then as I mentioned, your manifestation abilities will be on 10. Like I said, I feel like Spirit is like, make a wish, I will grant it, I will grant all your wishes. And I feel like this kind of pairs well with your Saturn in the 12th house energy, where it's like, if you put a lot of discipline into your spiritual practice, 12th house, you will see benefit from it, 11th house. So I feel like this Saturn energy is really going to work for you if you work with it, if that makes sense. So if you really meditate, take your spiritual practice seriously, it's really going to pay off for you. As I mentioned, your manifestation abilities are heightened. So whether you're tapped into that or not, either way, I feel like you're going to be inclined to engage in that. And it will be for your benefit ultimately. And then honestly, Saturn is also activating your 4th house and your 8th house. So those are the water houses. So all of your water houses are influenced by Saturn next year. So I feel like you're really going to have this control on your emotions. I know that can be kind of hard for Pisces because Pisces are known to kind of have like uncontrolled emotions. Some Pisces, not all of you guys. But next year you're really going to have a control on yourself. You're really going to have that sense of self-mastery, like that sense of knowing who you are, knowing your spirituality. No one can touch you. You know what I mean? I feel like you're just going to be so dignified in your own identity next year and in your own spirituality. And using your spiritual practices specifically to strengthen that sense of dignity you do have. And then also Saturn in the 12th house does indicate maybe traveling to foreign lands or working in foreign lands. Maybe you do travel outside of the country. Maybe it's a spiritual trip like a pilgrimage, or you're just traveling to foreign lands for fun. Either way, I do see travel magnified for you. I don't know if I mentioned that, but I do see travel magnified too. So I would say your challenges next year would be, I don't know. Honestly, you will have challenges. Everyone has life challenges, but I feel like there's so much abundance for you next year. Like so many good things are coming your way that I feel like you won't even see your challenges that much. But I do think a challenge could be isolation, like maybe you meditate too much, or I don't think there's a such thing as like meditating too much, but Saturn in the 12th does kind of indicate a bit of isolation, so maybe isolating yourself too much, which I feel like Pisces already do that. Or your fears might be triggered a little bit next year because 12th house is the house of fears. So your fears might be triggered a bit during certain circumstances. But like I said, I feel like you have so much abundance. It's really outweighing like the challenges you might have. So I do have a surprise for you guys. I did pull a tarot card of the year for you. And then I also pulled a word of the year for you. So if you guys want to know what those two things are, go to my Instagram at AstroKit. And I made a whole post on the 2020 predictions for the zodiac signs.